welcome back to Neo Psychology of me, your teacher, Mr. Neo, the channel where I teach online psychology lessons for my wonderful students. Today we're carrying on with the unit of memory and we're looking at lesson 5, explanations for forgetting interference. Let's do this. Starter. Your phone runs out of battery, so your friend lets you borrow theirs to send a message. When you go to send a message, it takes you longer to write the message than it would have done on your phone. Why? Why is that? If it's not the same phone, why did it take you longer to do it? Forgetting is the other side of the coin to remembering. Psychologists have tried to understand and explain it by carrying out research studies and formulating theories about why we forget. The specification focuses on two explanations. In today's lesson, we're going to consider the first of these, interference. So we're going to look at interference theory, we're going to look at research done by McGeoch and McDonald, effects of similarity, and then we're going to discuss and evaluate explanations of forgetting interference. Let's start, first of all, with interference theory. Interference, when two pieces of information disrupt each other. Forgetting occurs in long-term memory because we can't get access to memories even though they are available. There are two types of interference: proactive interference and retroactive interference. Proactive interference is old information interfering with new. Proactive interference occurs when an older memory disrupts a newer one. So for example, a teacher learns many names in the past and can't remember names of their current class. Retroactive interference is when new information interferes with old. Retroactive interference happens when a newer memory disrupts an older one. So for example, a teacher learns many new names this year and can't remember the name of their previous students. That's an example of retroactive interference. Now, interference is worse when memories are similar. This may be because in proactive interference, previously stored memories makes new information more difficult to store, and in retroactive interference, new information overwrites previous memories which are similar. And that's interference. How would you define interference? Can you complete the definition, fill in the gaps, write it down? Here you go. Interference is forgetting because one memory blocks another, causing one or both memories to be distorted or forgotten. This is most likely to occur when two memories are similar. So that is interference. Forgetting because one memory blocks another, causing one or both memories to be distorted or forgotten. This is most likely to occur when two memories are similar. So, can you decide whether the following instances of interference are proactive, old interfering with new, or retroactive, new interfering with old? Marika changes her email address after getting a lot of spam. 6 months later, her friends ask her what her old email address was, but she has forgotten. Proactive or retroactive? What do you reckon? Say it out loud. That is retroactive. Lucy learns French at primary school, then learns Spanish as well as French at secondary school. When her Spanish teacher asks her the Spanish word for dog, she gives the French name chien. Don't know if I said that correctly. Is that proactive or retroactive? It is proactive interference. Next one. Ish has played doubles tennis for years, but when his friend stops playing, he decides to start playing singles matches. At first, he keeps the ball within the singles part of the court, but after a few matches, he keeps hitting the ball into the tram lines, forgetting that this is not permitted in a singles match. Proactive or retroactive? That is proactive interference. Next one. After being dumped by his girlfriend Julie, Jonathan starts going out with a girl called Judy. When describing her to a friend, he refers to her as Julie. Oh gosh. Proactive or retroactive? That is proactive interference. Old interfering with new information. Elsie gets a new bank card and memorizes the PIN. When she wants to use her old card, she finds she has forgotten the PIN for that one. That is retroactive interference. Bo lives at 112 Dunster Road for 5 years. He moved to 10 Lambert Street and then, rather homesick, moved to 145 Dunster Road. After being there a year, he asked for his address and says 112 Dunster Road before realising his mistake. That is proactive interference. Joy takes a bike ride in Amsterdam and learns that to stop the bike, you need to pedal backwards. When she finds this very difficult to do, as she automatically pulls on the handlebars whenever she wants to brake, even though there are no brake handles there. That is proactive interference, and that is interference theory. Identify one thing you've learned about interference theory. Why do you think learning about this is important? And what's the hardest part to understand about interference theory? What questions has this raised for you? Feel free to put them in the comments. Otherwise, I'm ticking off learning objective 1, interference theory. I'm going to move on now to the piece of research. McGeoch and McDonald. I'm going with McGeoch. Here's the procedure. Participants were asked to learn a list of words to 100% accuracy, i.e. they could recall them perfectly. They were then given a new list to learn. The new material varied in the degree to which it was similar to the old. So here's the different groups. Group 1 had synonyms, words that had same meaning as the original list. 2 had antonyms, words that had the opposite meaning to the originals. Group 3 had words unrelated to the original list. 4 had consonant syllables, they're just random syllables. 5 has 3-digit numbers. And Group 6 had no new list. Participants just rested, so they're the control group. Which group do you think had the lowest recall of the first list? This is what was found. Performance depended on the nature of the second list. The most similar material, the synonyms, produced the worst recall. So, those that had the synonym list had the worst recall, followed by the antonyms, followed by the unrelated words, followed by the consonant syllables, then the numbers, and the control group did the best. What this shows is that interference is strongest when the memories are similar. When you're asked to remember a similar word list to the original one, that's when interference happens most, and that's when you're most likely to forget. Here's an application question on driving. You have just learned to drive a car in the UK and of course learn to drive on the left side of the road. You then fly to Spain for your holidays and hire a car. Driving out of the airport, you narrowly avoid causing an accident because you fail to drive on the right. This is one example of interference. Identify what type of interference this is and why this may have happened. Pause the video. Quote parts of the question in your answer because it's an application question. Right, write it down. Here's the answer. It is proactive interference. Your memories of older learning, so learning to drive in the UK on the left, are disrupting your attempts to learn something new, which is to drive on the right. So you forget to drive on the right. The situation is made worse by the fact that the two tasks, driving on the left and right, are similar. And that's McGeoch and McDonald's 1931 Effects of Similarity research. Finally, learning objective 3, to be able to discuss and evaluate explanations of forgetting interference. Let's have a look. What are some of the strengths and limitations of explanations for forgetting interference? One strength is some support for interference in real-world situations. Badley and Hitch in 1977 asked rugby players to recall the names of teams they had played against during a rugby season. Players did not play the same number of games because of their injuries and people on the bench. Those who played the most or had more interference had the poorest recall. So those that were actually on the field had the poorest recall. This shows that interference operates in some everyday situations, increasing the validity of the theory. So is this a strength or limitation? This is a strength. This is support for interference, a real-world application for supporting interference. Interference only explains some instances of forgetting though. A criticism is that, although interference effects do occur in everyday life, they do not occur that often. For example, rather special conditions are required for interference to lead to forgetting, as the two memories need to be quite similar. Therefore, interference is considered a relatively unimportant explanation of everyday forgetting. This means that other explanations are needed for a complete understanding of forgetting. So interference only explains some instances of forgetting. That is a limitation. Finally, there is real-world application to advertising. There are interference effects when people are exposed to advertisements from competing brands. Danaher et al. In 2008 found that both recall and recognition of an advertiser's message were impaired when participants were exposed to two adverts for competing brands in the same week. This interference effect was minimized by running multiple exposures to an advert on one day rather than spread over a week. This suggests that insights from interference research can enhance the effectiveness of advertising campaigns. So this is showing how you can apply the knowledge of interference to real-world application in terms of advertising. So that is a strength. Can you summarize each evaluator point into your own words? And if you want to challenge yourself, can you summarize each evaluator point into exactly 10 words? That's the evaluation. Learning objective 3, done. Right, here's the plenary task. Using your own knowledge from today's lesson, can you create 5 multiple choice questions about the interference theory? Feel free to give them to a friend to see if they can work them out. And there we go, that's the lesson. That was lesson 5, explanations for forgetting interference. Next lesson is lesson 6, explanations for forgetting retrieval failure. It's an alternative explanation for why we forget. Right? Well done, my neo-psychologist. Great job today. I've been Mr. Neo. God bless and peace.
I'm feeling like Will. I feel like a prince. I'm feeling myself. I'm loaded with bills. Cause I wasn't blessed with no Uncle Phil. Don't know how it feels. I wanted to flex. They told me to chill. I'm making a flip. My life is a flick. Now load up the film.